Yo, welcome to the Realness, everybody. It's good to be back. It's good to be back on the mic. I feel a little out of place, a little out of practice, but I think we'll make this work. This is the first episode that we're putting out since the Realness relaunch, and I want to start out by just saying thank you to everybody who left a review and supported the show. This was shared all over social media. We got 115 reviews in less than a month, so that's a huge turnout, and I really, really appreciate it. It means the world to me. It's super humbling to see everybody sharing the show and sharing the best of episodes, that first 32 episodes that really represent what the realness is all about. And so many things have changed. I've changed a lot. The show's changed a lot. And now we're kind of finding our stride and starting something new. And I'm really, really fucking grateful for all of you guys. So thanks again for showing up and leaving a review. And if you haven't yet, do it, please. Jump over there, pause the podcast right now, go to iTunes. I think you can actually listen to the podcast while you leave a review, which would actually that's like multitasking on a whole new level. So I'd really appreciate that, guys. It helps so much when we find new guests. And I will say, today's guest is absolutely incredible. And the guest that we have coming up, we're stepping up our game here. Let me just say that. We're stepping up our game. Things are changing, things are moving fast, and I'm excited for it. So let's get into today's show. We got Kirsten Asher coming on today. So Kirsten is my partner in the Realness Retreats. She's the founder of Fem Method. She's a leadership coach. She is a badass in a way. I wouldn't say like badass like scary badass, but badass like you want to give her a big fucking hug badass. And on this episode, we talk about things like past traumas and how they can hold us back. Things about jumping into your passion and creating a healthy relationship with your passion, and maybe not necessarily following the normal guidelines that say you need to quit your 9-to-5 job to be truly passionate about what you're passionate about. Creating a solid relationship with what you love about your life and standing up for that, finding your values, running the big decisions in your life past your values. It's a super fun show. Kirsten is an amazing human being. She actually is my roommate now, so we're totally immersed in each other's lives constantly. We haven't had any brother-sister battles yet, but I'm sure they are to come. So one other thing I want to share with you guys before we jump into the show is that, as I alluded to before, Kirsten and I run something called the Realness Retreats. And something that I've wanted to do since the beginning of this show is be able to provide a space for people in a trusted environment where we can experience not only the Realness Retreat components of this lighthearted personal growth work, but also incorporate plant medicines. People reach out all the time wanting to learn about ayahuasca and other plant modalities that are kind of beneficial in breaking patterns and opening up to yourself. And we have partnered with a healing center in Costa Rica called Soltara. It's an amazing place. They've just opened in the past year. People like Dennis McKenna are on the advisory board, so some heavy hitters are down there and influencing their practice. And they have moved a family from Peru that they've worked with for years to Costa Rica to facilitate in the Shipibo tradition. It's an amazing place, and I'm extremely grateful to be able to offer a Realness Retreat at Soltara incorporating the plant medicines. Now, I know a lot of people talk about ayahuasca and wanting to try it, and going to the jungle is a bold move. So what we aim to do is provide an environment with people that you trust. We're going down there. Actually, we're leaving in a week from the launch of this podcast to go down there and experience Soltara ourselves. We'll be sharing all of this on our social media and letting you guys know what's up, and then incorporating, like I said, the Realness Retreat components into kind of weaving them into their own program. Things like integration, preparation are taken extremely seriously. The accommodations are beautiful. You can check out all the links in the description of this podcast. We'll have more and more information. And if you want to schedule a free call just to talk it out and see if it's a good fit for you, you can go to gettherealness.com and just fill out the short form. It'll ask for your email, your first name, and you can jump on a call with me and we'll talk about if it's a good fit. So if you're feeling the call, go over to gettherealness.com, click on the Realness Retreats tab, and you'll be directed to a sign-up form. We'll get on a call, we'll see if it's right for you, and hopefully we'll see you in the jungle. Things like morning meditation and movement. We're going to do our classic face painting practice and dancing on the beach, playing the drums, going to the waterfalls. Like, it's going to be an incredible experience. It's coming up January 13th through the 20th, 2019. And if you happen to be listening to this podcast later on in 2019, there will be more coming up. So just go to gettherealness.com, hit the Realness Retreats tab, and then check it out. Hope to see you there. Hope you love the podcast. Kirsten is an amazing human being, and yeah, I think we're about ready to get into it. I'm excited to be back, guys. Enjoy the show. Kirsten, back at it again. This has been a long time coming. I remember we sat at your kitchen table and just basically soul merged. I would say soul merged is really
in souls.
Only souls. You can't go any further than that.
Way.
Get your mind out of the gutter, fans. Realness fans. This is soul level stuff. Soul contracts.
Yeah.
I think
Which we do have a soul contract.
We have a soul contract out there. I'd like to think about what our souls, like our first time that our souls tangled. What was that all about?
You know what? Actually, you and I don't have a soul contract. We are adversaries and builders together.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Which our souls
Is
definitely
it
work
like Bob
together.
the Builder and Dora the Explorer? Like that type of vibe?
Yeah,
absolutely. So we're really just out there just making, I mean, we're in the content world, so are they.
Oh.
I think that's actually a manifestation of us in our reality.
Dora the Explorer and Bob the Builder?
Yeah.
What about Diego?
Who?
Was it Diego the kid?
I don't know.
Abby
I don't
knows
know
what
about
I'm
this. I didn't watch those
about.
shows. I just was trying to make a joke, and now you've run away with it. You know that when you take the joke one step too far?
Welcome to my life.
You just took it one step. I was like, hang on, what? You took it too far.
All right.
And I anticipate, not that I can tell the future yet, I'm working on that, but I anticipate that we'll be taking things too far on this entire podcast.
Yeah,
this is the podcast of overstepping, because we're going to share some things in this, and it's, I mean, man.
It's going to be fun.
I hope so. I think I need to drink a little more wine as we get going.
All right, well, you need to finish that glass.
Oh, I'm going to finish it. Okay? Just fucking chill. Fucking chill over there. All right, so Kirsten, what we sat down to talk about, we have, as we had the Realness Retreat 1.0, the first Realness Retreat, sold out retreat here in Austin, Texas. No, I mean, humble brag. I love when people say things like sold out. Like, oh, we sold this retreat out. It's like, it's a humble brag.
Oh, I've definitely been saying that to people.
We definitely did it. We did it. It's like, yeah, I didn't even have to post it on my Instagram story. It just sold out pretty much immediately, so whatever. That's going on this weekend. This is Friday, or this is Thursday? The days
tomorrow.
are all merged together. It starts tomorrow, and we got to lay down a podcast before we get this thing going. And one thing that came up with us in conversation, and we ended up both having this kind of like energetic muscle testing clearing session randomly right before this whole thing started, and unpacked some crazy personal relationship stuff with romantic relationships and friendships and shit, man. Like, some stuff has come up in the past 24 hours.
Personal and with yourself too.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it all starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, going back, it was so weird because you go in there with this like present moment frustration, and then you just work back through the catacombs into your psyche, and you're like, holy shit, when I was 10 years old, my friends kind of just used me for whatever I had, like the toys and the four-wheelers and whatever shit that my parents like had bought in us, and I didn't really feel like they ever liked me. And I'm like, how many times I actually felt like somebody really genuinely liked me and didn't want to get something from me since then? Like, I don't even know what that feels like. Just every now and then I'll glimpse it. It's so wild. So wild. And Brenda took you back to like 1 year old.
Oh, yeah.
So crazy.
Well, and it's interesting because you as a kid going through that, and now you have, what's the word I'm trying to think of? You have ways with dealing with it. So now
Coping mechanisms. Yeah.
coping mechanism. So now instead of even recognizing that, it could still be coming up, although you are just so ingrained with this coping mechanism that you don't even notice it anymore. So I'm
Yeah.
curious after this weekend, because I mean, you and I, Maddie and Abby, have been together this whole couple, like last couple hours, so you haven't really had any time separate from us to really just be and be in the world and be with other people. So I wonder how much you'll notice that comes up of people either doing that or you having this coping mechanism coming up and being like, oh, that's what that is. Because it's all about the awareness, right? So
Yeah.
and I'm not too familiar with this muscle testing and the releasing, if it completely goes away or if it just brings more awareness to
Yeah.
what's going on.
Well, and it's funny. I think you're spot on there. And what kind of came up for me as you were saying that is that idea and that belief that people wanted something from me and didn't really like me
Mm-hmm.
was a way of guarding myself and being vulnerable, which is something else that came up in that session. I mean, I was with her for like an hour and a half, and if you guys aren't familiar with muscle testing, it's a really testing the body to emotional responses of statements, and she'll run through statements, and you can get very pointed listening to your body. So it was
Mm-hmm.
very unique and strange, and I don't want to butcher it, but I should even plan on talking about it, but here we are. It's so wild because it was something that I really enjoy and value, being vulnerable and being able to choose when to be vulnerable, and that was something that I was letting that past experience really create a way of being for me that kept me from that. It's so
Mm-hmm.
fucking wild. And now I am really curious going in now with just that little bit of awareness that could be happening as to how I'll adapt to new people, because I'm about to really uproot my whole life and
Mm-hmm.
do something I've felt really drawn to do since I was 19 years old. I mean, when I was I'd played football from fourth grade till I was in college, and then everything kind of got rocked when I couldn't play football anymore, and I was working oil and gas construction, injured my back, couldn't play ball for a year, and just kind of my whole identity got shocked, and I wanted to move to Australia. That was like my thing. I'm like, that's the farthest way I can get from home. I just want to I'll go work in on a boat. I don't care. I just want to get the fuck out of here. And my parents made a deal with me then that if I got into Texas State, which I had terrible grades when I was injured because I was like on pain medicine the whole time. It was just like a really crazy place for me, and I just had no idea who I was. And that actually came up in the work that I did with Brenda as well. Um, I just had no idea who I was, and I just knew something was different and it was off, and I wasn't what everybody thought I should be, and that
Mm-hmm.
was it genuinely, and that was the start of this whole kind of quest into what the fuck my life can be, what could be possible. But I felt the draw to just run away, to get away,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up getting into Texas State, and I'd made that deal with my parents that if I got in, I wouldn't go to Australia. So I went to Texas State. Great experience. I really got to recreate myself and step away from everything I'd ever known. And I felt like that was one of the best things I ever did. And now I've gotten to a place in my life where I've done a lot of the things I felt like I needed to do, especially looking back. And I get to a point now where I've created a lot of openness for myself to explore and wander.
Mm-hmm.
And then something pops up and it's like, you want to come up here for a month and hang out? And I'm like, yeah, let's go to Canada for a month and hang out and see what happens. Oh, by the way, right after that, you're going to go to Costa Rica for a week. Well, why don't you turn that week into a month and just see what happens? And I'm so excited to take what I learned about creating friendships and connections and relationships into this new crazy adventure that I have no idea how it's going to turn out, and I don't really want to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's something that's really exciting in the human experience, because going back to what you were talking about of your whole identity being shaken because you were a ball player. That was
Yeah.
who you are, that's what you did, that's how you related to the world. And I think in my observation of just, growing up as a teenager and seeing my niece now growing up and other people's kids growing up, and how other people's ideals are getting imprinted on young kids, and now they're feeling like, oh, okay, cool, this, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, they want me to be a lawyer, this is the way I'm supposed to be. Oh, I'm supposed to be a football player because I'm great at doing football, I'm going to get a scholarship, and then this is how my life is going to be planned out. um, and then having it rocked so hard and realizing, wow, there's this whole other world and universe out here that I was identifying so hard with just this one side of me. And we forget that we have these different, um, we have these different edges. We
Yeah.
have these different places of personality, and where our personalities can thrive, or we have, facets, and each facet sparkles a little bit differently, and you can explore those and see what those are. But so many people just get focused on that one area, like in one of the interviews talking about the corporate life of like, okay, this is my direction, this is everything I am, and this is all I'm going to be doing in this straight line. You forget about all this other stuff in your peripherals,
Yeah.
because you're just so focused on everything that you have had an identity as a child,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's been imprinted from a coach, whether it's been imprinted from your family, whether it's been, you know.
Yeah, it is really interesting to look at that and think about how, something I've thought about is the fact that this path that I was on really didn't have that much to do with me and things that I had chosen to have in my life. I was a big guy, right? And this is, you can say like that's just something that I really had nothing to do with. I didn't choose my genetics. I'm 6'4", and I was relatively athletic. And I think the same thing can be said for, you doing the same thing that your parents did, or doing what your parents wanted you to do, or going into that business, or having someone else's money, or having someone else's, looks from somebody. It's really, you have very little to do with those things. And if those things give you an advantage in the world, it leaves you with very little incentive to question yourself and look at yourself with intrigue and really explore inside yourself, right? Because you have to do that to let go and be open to what's around. You have to have some kind of confidence. Really, you have to have confidence in your ability to withstand a lot of pushes and pulls in different directions to be able to get out and do the things, right? To be able to question yourself. You have to have, it's almost like you have to have confidence in yourself to then question yourself, which is a crazy little cycle to find yourself on.
Yeah, I think because I was on the opposite end,
Yeah.
where I identified as a dancer. That was something that I did, although growing up, that there was a lot of different struggles. I didn't have the parent who was saying, oh, this is what you're going to do. Dance was something I did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be a career,
And I felt the same way about football, by the way. Like,
okay.
My parents weren't pressuring me into that. It was more of a, like, it worked out because I just was a big guy who was relatively athletic, and all my friends did it, and it wasn't like it was a lot of pressure there. It just, I had nothing to do with the fact that I had very little to do with my capacity.
Oh, okay.
I had like athletic privilege, if you want to go in that realm. I was like, yeah, I didn't, like, there's something think about LeBron James, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this weird part of success and going in that rabbit hole. It's like, well, he's 7 feet tall and athletic, so that helps when you go down that path, right? And you can make the most of it and do, be your best self through that. But at a certain point, there's a part of that you had very little to do with, like your genetic abilities.
Yeah,
right?
I see what you're saying.
I'm so grateful I didn't have like the overbearing parent piece of that.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I've also known people who grew up in that realm, and with parents who are like, you're not going to do this, you're going to do this, and that's the only thing, that's XYZ, and there you have it. And so many people and kids grow up in going down that route. I talked to a woman who she was just like I'm so blanking right now.
Get it together, dude. You had too much wine.
I know. I had too many wine glasses of one glass of wine. Too many sips. No, so she, the financial, like Wall Street.
Oh, she was in finance.
Yeah, in finance. And so this is like exactly what you're going to do, and you're going to do this for the rest of your life. And she went to school and she did the whole thing, the whole gamut.
Yeah.
And then realized, like, wait a minute, this is not anything what I want to do.
Yeah.
At all. And so what can I do outside of experiencing this, and how can I experience the world and really find that one thing that sets me apart, or sets my feeling apart, or really ignites me.
Yeah. And there's so many options too. It's almost overwhelming if you really open yourself up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like what fires you up, and I honestly feel like sometimes you don't even have to have that as your career. I feel like there's a certain people out there that are like, you end up with these people that have the capacity to do and be happy in the, like, quote unquote, like, normal world, right? And that's totally fucking great with them. That's kick ass. And you have people that are kind of, they can, and they're also curious, and they're like this like half seeker, half capable of half normal. It's like, well, let's call it the normal realm, and then you have these like hybrid where they're curious, but they also like love that stability. And then there's certain people that are just pure fucking seekers, and they just can't find a way. It's like a shirt that doesn't fit, trying to be in the normal day-to-day 9 to 5. Like that lifestyle just doesn't fit for some fucking reason. And it's like, no, almost to the point, and I found myself there where I'm sitting there like, I wish I could just do this without being so fucking in my head about it and so uncomfortable doing what I feel like I'm supposed to do. It's such a weird thing to be in. And I think there's just different types of people, right? If you're in the financial world and that's a very by the book, like textbook corporate America, and that just fucking just feels super out of place for you, then from there you really end up in this kind of like, it's such a funky ass place. I mean, that's like, it's almost like they have this like funk on you of this doesn't feel right if you're a seeker. But if you're not and you love playing that game and there's a camaraderie piece to it, I don't think there's any shame in that. And I think sometimes when you get in this world of do what you love and that whole mentality, we end up like almost shaming people for being able to be normal.
I think so. I think that's a big thing of it. And also people who are saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Some people just love gardening. They don't have to become a gardening entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's you can have hobbies that stay hobbies. And I get frustrated a lot of times when you have people out there who are advocating others to leave their job to follow their passion.
The goal. The goal is to like leave your 9 to 5 and follow your passion.
And some people, that's just not their personality.
Yeah.
And so it makes me feel that some people are being led in a direction that doesn't align with them or that doesn't fit for them because somebody is telling them and making it sound so amazing that like leave your 9 to 5, turn your hobby into your career and and it's going to be so amazing. You can make money because you're going to be so authentic that you're going to be giving all this heart-centered stuff, or you're going to be building all this stuff for other people. And it's like, that could be right for the right person who has that specific thing about them, that seeker thing, or the entrepreneurial type ideas, or the small business person who's like an edge seeker, like adventure seeker, like the adrenaline type person.
Who can deal with instability well.
Instability, because I have people who, when I was freelancing all the time, I didn't know who was going to call me for my next job.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. Like I figured out my finances of how I can go from, have a savings account and then go from job to job to job to job and make sure everything was working out and making those connections and everything I needed to.
Yeah.
And then I would talk to people who are more in the 9 to 5, who had that more, the thought process of the stability. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't even dream of doing anything freelance. They're like, that just scares the shit out of me. And I'm like, a cubicle scares the shit out of me. So it's
right.
Like, people are different. And so it worries me a lot of the time when you hear so much of create this in your life, and your hobbies and your this and that, and create it as a career, because sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and there's the one thing that's cool about the world now, I think you're spot on, and a lot of the guys that I work with too come from this place of almost feeling bad that they don't have this like other outlet outside of their 9 to 5 job. And one of the things that I do in lifestyle design is help them find what that is, like find what scratches the itch and get there and get fulfilled through that, but without like the goal being leaving your job. Because when you start thinking about things in that lens, well, then you're just kind of buying someone else's bullshit, right? It's like maybe you think you bought the bullshit, now you're in the corporate world. Well, then you're just gonna buy this like the fucking Facebook entrepreneurs like bullshit, and then go like try to sell your whatever arts and crafts on Etsy and make $300 million a year. Like that shit doesn't really happen all that often. But you can do something. Say like you love quilting, like we were talking about. It's like, well, yeah, then you like slang some of those things on Etsy and have a great time doing it. That doesn't mean you have to like, put your kids at risk.
Yeah, you can do it as like supplemental.
Yeah, and have and then it can continue being a passion, continue being fun, without being this like wild and crazy like I'm gonna live in a shoebox and eat ramen noodles adventure, right?
Or start putting stress on your passion to make you money.
Oh man, which is a dangerous path a lot of people go down. And I've been there. I did that with the gym. Like I was a fantastic coach, not a great gym owner. And I can be honest with myself about that as best I can. Like I was naive and went into that and saying like, yeah, because I'm special and I do a really good job, it's going to make my business successful. Guess what, motherfucker? That's not how the world works. Like, shit goes wrong, and
Mhm.
that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to go down. Like, there's beauty in that chaos, but that's the reality. And
Mhm.
maybe that's not the one that you see on the YouTube success stories, but that's a lot of what really happens. So if
Mhm.
you're not prepared for that, well, then you're not prepared to do this thing in that way. And that's, if you never are, that doesn't mean you're less of a person.
Oh yeah.
That's so, I see that so often.
Well, I think around that comes the shame and failure of, oh, I couldn't make this work, and I feel like now, the next thing I try, I'm going to fail at, or the next thing I try, I'm going to fail at. Not
Yeah.
that you're saying those words to yourself, but your body already feels that.
You're like
You
buying into
know.
that story.
Yeah, you're buying
Yeah.
into that story subconsciously, and you're holding on to that, and you may not even realize it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a huge advocate for, like, if you know it's a great thing and it's an idea and you have that gusto and that dedication to be like, all right, here I go, I'm going to make this a business.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, go for you. Make sure you have some netting around you as well.
Yeah.
Or do what you were just saying, like, keep your job, whatever it is. Because I also feel that if you start getting into the realm of, like, okay, cool, I'm going to start creating my hobby or my passion as my main money maker, then while you're in your job that's supporting you, you're now getting frustrated because you have to spend time there.
Yeah.
So now you're not fully focusing and enjoying what you're doing at your job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be not that great of a job, but you can find things that you enjoy, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
the people who are there that you're like, oh, I just love the people. I don't really like my job, but I love the people. And then you have this other thing that you're trying to make your career. You're now making what you're doing right now as the culprit and
Yeah.
the thing that's holding you back from this big, amazing business idea. And then you leave the job, you do the big, amazing idea, and it doesn't work out, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not prepared for that. You don't have that netting.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you end up resenting. It goes like you're just, it's like a cycle of resentment, right? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm resenting this job for being in my way of having this like massive breakout success as a YouTube influencer, and then you go into that, and then you have this idea, because when you look at, it's like the backup quarterback, right? Since you don't ever get the chance to see them perform, like, everybody loves the backup quarterback because they could always have, oh, maybe they would have been in this one game,
Mm-hmm.
then that everything would have changed everything. You can create this narrative that's really fun and enticing, but then you get into that and you end up doing kind of what I did, where it's like, oh man, because I'm coaching for these other people, I'm being held back from like my own booming
Mm.
business. And then it's like, well, now, so I have the resentment for like working for someone else, into then creating a business that's not working and having resentment for that, into that, then and it was good. It was like not a bad thing, but it wasn't like what I expected it to be, because expectations are fuckery. And then I go into that, and it's like, okay, well, the only thing left for me to look at is myself and how I brought myself to every one of these situations. And now I
Mm-hmm.
have to dissolve the fact that I fucking resent the fuck out of myself. And then you get there. And then from there, you can actually do something. But it's got to be like, where did I find that whole pattern into me? And like, let me finally, after all this bullshit, look inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so helpful, but it takes a little while to dance around that, especially as a man, when you're told you're supposed to do all these things. It's
Mm-hmm. Well,
wild.
that's like that comes down to the the masculine feminine balance and polarity, because it's if a man is wavering in what
Mhm.
he's doing, he's the woman's gonna feel it,
Yeah.
because he's gonna be like, all right, like, I don't feel strong enough. And this is my obviously I'm not a man, so this is my
I'll let you know if you're off.
education and this is my
I'm
observation.
speaking for men everywhere.
But
Men everywhere right
if a
now.
man doesn't feel like he's supporting or bringing in the money or bringing in, like, the stability, it's going to possibly cause some waves in the relationship, because now he feels like he's not supporting his woman, or he's not going to be able to be the provider and all that stuff. So it's when you choose to move from one career to the next, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, cool, what is the safety net? What is going to be going on? And then also, are you communicating that with the person you're with if you're in a relationship, and
Yeah.
creating that dynamic? Because as the man, yes, there's all this pressure to be the protector, the provider, and and then that's not purely financial.
Yeah.
That's in all realms, but if you're feeling like you're lacking in one area, then that can spread out into all areas, and then all of a sudden now your woman's like, okay, cool, like we haven't been intimate for a while. What's going on? You're not talking about stuff, and I have no idea how to support you. And then this balance gets out of whack, right? Because now there's nothing bringing you guys together anymore.
Yeah.
If that.
100%. No, I'm looking at you like that because I've had that exact thing
Okay.
happen.
Okay. Like, is this anything?
No, no.
Okay.
I didn't interrupt you because
Well, no. I go
channeling
off.
I'm channeling the energy of men everywhere. So you were spot on.
Well, I go off on tangents too, and then I lose my
Yeah.
place, and I'm like, I don't even know what I was.
No one knows where we are. We don't even know where we are. We're melting into the universe. No, so we look at this and it's like, yeah, I think you look at that and you say, okay, there's something about men that in masculinity in general that thrives in stability and providing and taking care of someone. I think that's something in relationships we don't do a lot of because people say things like, yeah, I want my man to take care of me. And guys will say that about their partner as well. And we don't ever really get clear on what that means. I think that's something that because I was in a situation with the gym, and as the whole thing was going, I was dating the same person through that whole period. To this day, the best girlfriend I've ever had. Like she's the best. And through that, like, and she was very financially stable. I just bought a house and was killing it. It's super awesome, still is. And we actually somehow in that time found a way to understand like I'm definitely not bringing home as much money as you are. We didn't live together, but it was like there were certain things where it's like I knew that I could, if I could be there for her and like be supportive and like take care of her in the ways that I could. There wasn't any imbalance there, and there was definitely never any kind of financial imbalance there because she was so stable in that, and she also knew that I loved doing what I was doing and I was really providing good service, and I was very, very confident and capable and fulfilled in what I was doing. And so we had these kind of like she didn't really necessarily love her job, but it provided her a really great life. And I loved my job, but it didn't provide the same thing. So we had this really nice balance, and we're able to communicate about that. And that was extremely helpful. And then we get to a place where I kind of lost my purpose and was out in the wild again. And like, what do I need to do? Who am I? What do I need to make happen here? Which ultimately led to this so far is been whenever it got there, that's when I couldn't be in the relationship anymore, which was really hard for me to reconcile. Because it wasn't anyone's fault. It's just her stability was getting in my way of the chaos that I needed to grow. And having to have that conversation, even then I knew. I was like, I have an artificial sense of stability and accomplishment in this relationship, and I need to have the fire under my ass right now because I've got to stand up for myself, and I'm not doing that.
Do you think it was partly two things? Do you think it was partly ego coming in, being like, I don't want to be supported. I want to be the supporter or a co-supporter with somebody. Or do you feel it was really going out and being like, I need to figure my stuff out before?
I think it was more, there may be some egoic stuff there, but I think it was more that I didn't see myself. I was unpacking a lot of stuff with my family too at the time. I was really getting into this, like, this is where the whole Connor Wanders thing came from. It was during that time. So I was like really existentially kind of all over the place. And I wanted to do it on my own a little bit, and I knew it wasn't ever going to be like on my own, but I wanted to explore myself without the if I'm really honest with myself here, or trying to be, I didn't want to have someone else's feelings as a consideration while I was trying to sort it out, because that was just kind of a lot. It was
You needed your journey.
It was already a lot, and it was a lot to reconcile that fuck, I mean, look at it, it was 28, and I had been coaching CrossFit since I was 21. So like you look at this, like 7 years of my life, which is almost a third of it at that time. I had been focused on this one thing, and that thing was now gone. So it was like childhood, football, strength and conditioning. I've always had something to attach to. I've always had my friends made for me, and now I'm I'm out here. I'm just like out here in the wild, right? I gotta figure this out. And I don't think I wanted to leave myself a life preserver. I didn't want, and she was so compassionate and so caring that I think I probably could have just kind of rode that
Mhm.
forever. We'd probably be married by now, right? And I'd probably be working some like tech sales job or some shit. Who knows, right? And I'd probably have a really great job and have a really great life. But I think I would have always had that in the back of my mind, and I didn't want that.
The what if?
Yeah, like the the idea that I never could have taken care of myself.
Mm.
That was very strange for me. Because it wasn't. I mean, yeah, it was something like that. It was me. That's me being very honest with myself. Look at as best I could be, and look at that and being like, have you really ever just fucking taken care of yourself, like without any kind of codependency, without any bullshit? Can you actually? And this is, I was being harsh with myself. Honestly, I was like, can you actually fucking take care of yourself? Like, go do that, please, because you need to do that as an adult, male, female, whatever. Like, you need to know that if you need to, you can be resourceful enough to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
And I wasn't there. I just wasn't there. And that was, I didn't want to live my life that way. I knew that at that point. Something had clicked in me, and I was like, no, I got to sort this out. And I've been doing it. I mean, this shit has been a process, you know. But there was no point in, there was no. I don't think it was that I was. It was. It didn't feel egoic. It didn't feel
Mhm.
like posturing. It was. It wasn't that. It was me being very pragmatic with myself. Like, you need to be able to stand tall as yourself, as you, independent, before you start latching arms with somebody else and like moving forward that way. Because that is the best way. I feel like that's the best way to create a deep bond and partnership with someone else and move through the world that way. I feel very drawn to that idea. But I also feel like being able to have the capacity to stand up for yourself
Mhm.
in challenging situations is something that will never be a weakness if you have the capacity to do that.
I agree.
So yeah, that was a wild time. It was a wild time, but I find gratitude for it. But fuck, it sucks sometimes. Looking back at that, being like, why did I have to do that?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's one
But
of
I
the
had
things
to, yeah.
that that even in, where we created this group for our retreat members,
Yeah.
and asking questions, and really getting into it before they were coming to the retreat to build that community. And that's one of the questions that we asked was, what is something that you had to go through that you might have looked back and been like, oh, I wish I didn't have to go through that. Although having that lesson and having that whole experience, you're actually happy that you went through that. Like
Yeah.
what you went through at the time sucked.
Yeah.
And it was really, really hard. And see all the lessons that you got. Like, you wouldn't turn around and be like, no, I can just like nix that out of my life.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't change it for sure.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
think that's a lot with life, where you're going through something, you're like, oh, if I could turn back time, I would change this. But I also think there's a slight issue with that, because where you are now, you wouldn't have been there if you didn't have that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you felt like there, especially in the context of relationships, like those, I feel like almost my life can be funneled into, like, my relationships are so reflective of where I was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have some of those where it's like, wow, I learned a lot through that crazy experience. I'm so grateful that person was there, even though it was extremely challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn about yourself, you learn about different likes, dislikes. It's interesting that comes up, because you wouldn't have normally been able to get there as quickly unless you had that experience.
Exactly. Oh shit, yeah. So when you look at, what you're doing with yourself and how you're moving through the world, and even, I mean, I would even say, like, since the last time we podcasted, which, again, one of the best podcasts out there that we've done, it's about 85% giggle time. So that was also great. We've actually talked more on the first 30 minutes of this podcast than we did in the whole hour of that last podcast.
Oh, gosh.
But when you look at that and you look back on your own life, right, and you see where you are now, like, what are some of those pivotal points for you where you felt like you kind of faced the darkness, like went into the cave, like into the belly of the beast, as they say? Yeah.
I can get real, or I can get really real.
Well, I think there's only one option since the name of the podcast is the realness.
Well, I'll tell you that's one of the things that came up today during that muscle testing, that whole thing of coming up with, I in my childhood, I had a brother who was a lot older than me, and he had a very difficult life, got into drugs and alcohol, and would always be coming back to the house, right? And him and I did not. It was oil and water. We did not get along at all, and it took me a long. Well, I mean, even today, in the whole thing, where she's like, "Tell me about your brother." I was like, "Well, this kind of happened." She's like, "Okay, tell me like what really happened," and it's even hard. It's hard for me to even say the word like mental or emotional abuse with that, because he is my brother,
Yeah.
But it basically was that. It was a lot of yelling. It was a lot of getting in your face. It was a lot of like scariness. And she was bringing me back to that time of like, okay, cool. This is a time in your life where a very, very pivotal moment. And it was where I started building up that armor and that shield of like, all right, cool, fuck you. Like, I can take this.
Yeah.
You, like, keep coming, because it's just bouncing off. And they're like, nothing's going to burn me now,
Yeah. Like artificial resiliency.
Yeah, exactly. But deep inside, like, I was just breaking and crumbling. And then I had this, what did she call it? False sense of fraud.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
false sense of fraud.
False sense of fraud. So then I had this like, oh, I'm this personality, or I'm that person. Like, I'm this happy go lucky, to like, just so everybody didn't really know that I was like breaking inside, and I was like just feeling really, really crappy, and to a point where I didn't know how to get out the stuff that was going on inside. So I started hurting myself because I didn't know where that needs to go. I mean, this is going deep.
Yeah, get there.
Okay.
Let's go. We fuck with that on this podcast. You know that. I like you keep giving caveats as if I'm like going to be like, oh no, please stop. Please stop. Shut the fuck up, Kirsten.
We're supposed to be giggling.
Yeah. This is supposed to be a giggle fest. Okay, folks, for those of you guys who are listening, we sit down for this podcast to talk about sex and dating, and here we are. Everyone's like,
my God,
do you have
hilarious.
show notes for the podcast? I'm like, we just kind of goes where it goes.
Just gonna flow.
I actually have a run sheet here. It says chivalry defined. That's the only note that's on it.
Oh, that's good.
Anyways, back to we were talking about that earlier. So back to that though, really, like, so please continue. You have permission to be your full authentic self.
Thank you.
From all the men that I'm channeling right now, which is all of them.
Oh, thank you, every man in the universe. So it was this false sense of identity, and where it was a very, very difficult time, and nobody is to blame for it, right? Like, you can go back and be like, oh, he was such a dick, or why did my mom allow him to stay there? And even though, like, it got to a point where my shield was so built up and so thick that I would just start instigating him and pressing his buttons in hopes that he would get so frustrated with me and just leave. Like, he was 15 years older than me, so he, didn't really hold down a job and didn't have an apartment, but that was my goal, was just to like get him out and piss him off enough that he would leave, because I felt safe enough behind my armor that it, like, I'm just gonna prod you, like poke the bull,
Yeah.
So that it was interesting how that came up today during that, and her saying, like, with today's world and things that are going on, and people saying, oh, this is the right way to be, and and me being like, no, like, I know where I am in my core value and have confidence there, but the fact that you're making me feel like it's that false identity again, kind of coming back.
Like, you're trying to fit the role that the community kind of has made for you, or would prefer you to be?
Prefer.
Yeah.
I think not even prefer, but questioning why I don't want to do a certain thing based off of my confidence.
Yeah.
Like, that is...
Do you want to be less obscure?
Yeah, we can go less obscure. So...
Everybody's like, thank you.
I know, right?
I love when podcasts keep it
Yeah.
really vague.
Yeah. We were actually talking about this earlier. I'm like XYZ.
Yeah.
Um,
I had this really challenging experience, and it's been great ever since.
Yeah,
Podcast
right?
over. Okay. Anyways.
So the some of the people who are in the community that I live in are very into open relationships, and people, it's not necessarily forcing it down your throat, although I had an instance come up where I was like, okay,
It feels like that from a similar perspective. It feels like if you're resistant to it and somebody
Yeah.
else it feels like it's like you can't escape it almost.
it does. It
I
feels
don't want
very
to interrupt
overwhelming.
you, but it feels like I will say that it feels like people are forcing it down your throat sometimes.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because for me, I was like, I don't know, maybe this
It's
is just me.
it's my divine masculine, just not being a pussy and just saying what I feel.
Oh God. But that's the thing of like my community. This is such like for some people, it's just such like a normal thing, and it's like, well, why don't you think this way, or why
Yeah.
aren't you okay with the open relationship? It must be your confidence, or it must be your confidence in your own relationship. And I'm like, is it? Then it has me question, like it has me questioning myself, and is it a societal norm, or is it something that I truly just really don't resonate with? And then it had me building up this armor to people in my community and being like, all right, fuck you, like, send me all your open relationship things. Like, this is just not something that feels right to me, and it's
Yeah.
frustrating the fuck out of me that you're telling me it's a confidence thing when deep down inside I know it's not a fucking confidence thing.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts and it's like people aren't beating you down being like, do this, do this, do this, or saying it's a problem, but
Yeah.
so many people are bringing it up and talking about it, and like, well, let me ask you a question about this, and like, I love all of them. Like, most of them I know from one person to the next person, and some people who are in open relationships, awesome, like, that's great, it works for you, that's awesome, I love you for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not for me. And to have so many people saying it's like, oh, it's an issue with you, it's an issue with your confidence, it's an issue with your confidence in the relationship, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So having that, like, it started in a relationship way, going back to the muscle testing thing. It started within different relationships of, people and community, and then it went back into my brother and that false sense of fraud, because I had to put up this armor.
Yeah.
And I knew deep down like I could handle it, but I was still breaking inside. So I had this, it was like that double negative type thing.
Yeah.
And then she brought it into real time, and she's like, this is how it's coming up for you now, is because you're having to build up this armor to ward off people, just to say, like, I'm good how I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you, like with my brother, like, I'm good how I am. Like, I don't need you beating me down type of thing. Not that he was physical. I don't want to put that out there, but like,
emotionally.
in that sense. Yeah. So going back to your original question though, that is something that made me who I am. It made me resilient. It made me be like, you know what? I may be scared. I may feel like I'm falling and drowning underwater, but I'm still going to push through. I wouldn't change a thing. It sucked, and it was really, really shitty to go through. And I don't think I could change it if I wanted to. Because it's something that the lessons that I'm continuing to learn from that still have weight in life right now.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on there, and it looks like, okay, so even if you said, okay, if you go back and be like, I would change that, right? I would change that. Well, what would you replace it with? Like, it's very hard to even say, like, well, I would replace it with whatever,
Mm-hmm.
not having a brother, right? Whatever it is, but it's hard to even fathom, like, it's infinite. Like, when you say, like, oh, I wish I could change this thing in my past, it's like, well, what would you change about it? Can you actually dial it down to what you would change about it? Because you can't. You've created a narrative for, like, the fact that it just wasn't enough or it wasn't right or whatever, and then when you really get down to, like, would you actually change it? Would you really change it? What if I gave you some options? Would you change it into those? And it's like, very rarely do I think people would actually choose to change those things. And bringing awareness to them and liberating yourself from bullshit that doesn't really serve you anymore, also really great,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you become, instead of pretending to be resilient and hiding behind armor, you're actually authentically, genuinely able to bring yourself to the world and be like, hey, guess what? This isn't armor. These are my fucking boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because I decided where they are based upon investigating myself and looking within and how I've brought myself to the world and what my responses are to certain things that aren't my fucking ego and they're not my insecurities and they're not my confidence. It's just that's just who I want to be. So
Mm-hmm.
get the fuck out of my face.
Exactly. And I also get like to that point. There are some instances where shitty, like really shitty things happen to people that I understand like need to be
Yeah.
erased and like the trauma and all that stuff. So this is I just want to make that note.
Yeah, let's
This
put a
is like
caveat there where it's like
specifically talking about you and me.
exactly, where it's like
Not
relationship
everybody.
things, where it's like kind of
Yeah.
traumatic. If there was like let's put it out, like go far extreme, like if like rape or something like that, like some kind of super serious sexual, yeah, I would let that be like, yeah, that's if you could change that, yeah, you could let that one go. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
a serious traumatic event of violence. Like that's a different conversation
Yeah.
completely. But we're talking about these things that were like just kind of fucked. You know,
Mhm.
it's like they were just a little fucked. You know?
We're just like, why am I off? Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm a
well,
little kooky. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
it's cool. Yeah. Different conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's really healthy in relationships to be open with that stuff
Yeah.
because it gives the person who you're with an insight into you. I had a relationship where the guy I was with didn't want to open up any past stuff. Like I maybe on a scale of 1 to 10 knew a 2
Yeah.
of his past, and it was mainly like, oh, the good stuff and like maybe this was hard, but he would not dive into anything because he's like, I don't even want to know your past. I asked him if he wanted to come back to my hometown with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. 4th of July is so cool. Everybody goes from the Main Street down into the park and and like talking it up and getting super super excited. And he's like, no, I don't really want to see your past.
He said that?
Yeah,
That's wild.
and it kind of struck me because I was like, damn, okay, cool. I want to see your past. Like I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know why you are you and what created that. And like
Yeah.
give me all of it. So I'm a true believer in relationships. It's so helpful. Like the relationship I'm in right now, it's really helpful to be like, hey, this situation kind of happened.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm very untrusting of men because
Mm.
this particular situation or multiple situations or the men in my life, I didn't really have really strong men in my life. So I see men as very undependable,
Mm.
and I can come out and say that to him. So in those instances where there is a little bit of misunderstanding or a little bit of conflict,
Yeah.
it can be communicated and talked about rather than blowing up in this huge argument. Like we've never had one argument because we're very, okay, cool. Let's actually say what's here on your heart or in your mind and have a conversation about it and not be reactionary to it.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's a hard place to get to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard place to get to in a relationship. I mean, we say that, and a lot of people say that, like, oh, communication is key, and things like that. But it is challenging to get to a place where it can be like, hey, like, what happened with me in my life honestly didn't have anything to do with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not. My mom being an addict and like kind of being super unreliable and like running around and like me being extremely disappointed in the woman that I really needed to be stable for me in my life. That's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of what that's my reality right now, and I'm working on it. I'm not gonna get mad at you for no reason, and make it seem like it's your fault. Like I don't want to, and that's the one thing I think is really cool about taking ownership of your history and your experience in life, and looking at that and be like, okay, you know what, the logical response of something like that happening is some abandonment issues or finding men kind of habitually unreliable, like, and biasing that is fucking normal. That's a normal response. It's a normal reaction to that experience in life. And you can take that and say, okay, cool, that's my normal response to that. That's where I'm at right now. When that comes up, I can now kind of be inquisitive about myself. Not so critical of myself, like, or critical, even worse, of someone outside of me that has nothing to do with that experience, right? They're just someone that probably really fucking loves you. and say, all right, well, this feeling coming up that I have. Is that something that's from an experience that I want to hold on to, or from a pattern that I want to hold on to, or something I want to fucking let go? And when you can get there, it's like, okay, cool. Now I'm actually taking ownership of my life experience up to this point. And when that feeling comes up, it's like, is that an abandonment issue, or is that intuition?
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is that you're gonna fuck that up for a while. Like, you're gonna get in a place where it's like, oh, that's kind of, I don't know, I can't really tell, and you're gonna be wrong, and that's okay. That's where compassion becomes very important. It's like, oh shit, I was wrong about that. Now I know what that gut feeling is. Or certain relationships in my life in the past couple of years, I'm like, oh, that big empty feeling in my chest. That's what that means. Like, don't trust this person. Cool, now I know, but I wasn't like beating myself up about it more than I needed to. It was just like, oh my wow, okay, that's the development of intuition through getting kind of clumsy. And I think that's a huge, when I hear someone say that and be very, at least transparent and at best vulnerable with who they are and how they've gotten to be the person that, in a romantic relationship, the person that I've fallen in love with, right? In that way, it really does deepen a connection. I don't think people should throw it out there first thing, but I think that over time, if you can get there with someone, that means that they've at least been inquisitive about themselves enough to see that maybe their reactions to events aren't necessarily justified based on the other person, but more on themselves. And then when you get clear on that, then when someone outside of you is kind of fucking you over, you can be like, oh wow, that's like not cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm clear on that as well, because that's, I have a better gauge on myself. One of the reasons I think it's really challenging in early 20s and relationships and early relationships is you just don't have the kind of capacity or the experience to know what's what. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? Like, you just
The
kind of,
deciphering.
yeah, it's like, is
Yeah.
this intuition, or is this some kind of past bullshit that's resurfacing?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I see that a lot. People getting like jealous about things that are weird, or getting angry at somebody for getting mad at them. I think these like weird back and forths in their early 20s, and it's like you almost need a few relationships to work out those kinks. And that's what there's. It's always so grateful to like looking back on your like high school relationships and your
Mm-hmm.
early college relationships and being like, man, that was really fun and crazy and wild. And I was like rowdy as hell. Like, I was just feeling. I was like just getting into that stuff, was just manifesting for the first time, because I had these strong feelings. And when you get in these early relationships and then they end, and you've had the idea that they're not supposed to end ever.
Mm-hmm.
You're almost in this like naive and really vulnerable state.
Yeah.
It's wild. And that's one thing I say. Like, I've said this several times, but it's like when you get to where you're single in your 30s and you're like, oh wow, I feel like I won a prize because I got through all that like bullshit of crazy madness, and now here I am, actually able to understand myself well enough to know what I value about myself and know what I value about other people.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a big one, is finding your values and your
Yeah.
own personal values, not what society says and not what your parents say or your teachers or any of those people or even your friends. It's really sitting down and being like, okay, cool. What is important to me? What are these top 5, 4, 3 values? And running everything past those values. Maybe you have 5 values that you are your morals are like you stand by, that's in your core, and you take the top 3 that are the most important. You say, okay, this job, does it hit all my values?
Mm-hmm.
If it's out of alignment, maybe this is not the job for me. This relationship, this person that I'm bringing in my life, this idea, is it, for example, grace and ease? Like, is this going to create grace and ease? And I think that's also important to have in a relationship where you have one person and the next person, right? You have 2 people,
Yeah.
man and woman. And if you're constantly doing things to try to make sure that that person is okay and happy, you're going to sometimes forget about yourself, right? And vice versa. And their happiness isn't dependent on you
That's
as well,
codependency.
right? So
Yeah.
if you have this third pillar, call it your values of the relationship, right? You have a company, you create values. You have like a podcast, like these are the values. This is like what our podcast stands for. This is what our
Yeah.
company stands for. This is what our brand stands for. So you have a relationship, and what does your relationship stand for? Like, what are those values that both of you hold for your relationship? And what comes in and out is held up against those values. So
Huge.
say it's like, a trip. Let's go we're super surface right now, but it's a trip to Nicaragua, right? And you have 3 different values. You have grace and ease, you have honesty, and you have stability.
Mm-hmm.
This trip to Nicaragua is going to cost you 15,000, the specific trip. So is it going to be grace and ease? Is it going to be, what was the second one?
Stability.
Honesty and
Honesty,
stability.
yeah.
So maybe it's going to put you guys like financially back a lot. So is going to this Nicaragua trip really good for your stability? So now you're basing your decisions off of your values rather than the other person. And
Yeah.
being like, oh, is this going to make them happy? Is this going to make them sad? And then sometimes you get resentful, like, oh, I can't do this. Like my ball and chain, my wife back home, she doesn't want me to go bowling on tonight,
Yeah.
Or is it, oh, actually, I understand that she doesn't want me to go bowling because family is our top value, and I haven't seen my kids for
Yeah.
3 days because I've been traveling for work. So you know what? Instead of going bowling with you guys, I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
Because value is our top thing. So if both people are going towards these values and running decisions past your values, then the resentment is lowered a lot in relationships.
Yeah, it also takes down the distraction factor too of like
Mm-hmm.
the decision paralysis, right? Where there's just too many things to choose from. It's
Yeah.
like, well, does this align with those things? Does this align with being honest, with being compassionate, whatever those values are for you? And I think it's good to not have 25 of them, like to have in between 2 and 4.
3, yeah. Keep it easy.
Yeah, and that's a great place to be. It's something to really. I always have like mantras are really important too in relationships. It's like something that you really resonate with. Like I remember saying, I didn't want to doubt how you feel about me. I don't want you, or excuse me, I don't want you to have to doubt how you feel about me or how I feel about you. God, I'm fucking this up. I don't want you to doubt how I feel about you and my actions. Now, if that happens, I would like for you to say something because I obviously can't feel your feelings necessarily. Empathy only goes so far, right? But I knew in being able to speak that out and say that to someone and know like if that's the case, if that's happening in my actions, like that's something I want you to speak up and let me know through the lens of what I've given you. Like I've given you, this is my intention, this is where I'm coming from. Let me know if I'm out of alignment with that. That's really important to me, and it gives them then permission to be like, hey, that really made me feel like that brought up some feelings of insecurity around your feelings towards me. Then we can talk about that because it's like I asked for that, and I feel like that's huge.
I think it's really big because there's always going to be relationships ebb and flows, right? So
No, they're always awesome all the time. That's why I'm single. I'm just waiting for one to be awesome all the time.
False sense of it. False sense of but you can also I lost my train of thought.
No, you didn't. It's there.
It is there.
It is there.
Oh, relationships ebb and flow. So you're going to have these really, really great times, and you're going to have these times that are extremely stressful or shit's just not going right. Mercury retrograde.
Oh my God. There we go.
Just kidding.
I'm sorry, Mercury's just in retrograde, so I'm being a bitch right now. It's like, you're just being a bitch. Just take ownership of your feelings.
Oh my God.
I'm about to be on the couch.
There's so many ups and downs, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like if you can understand that and not hold. I mean, we had this conversation when I flew in. Like I was going through something in my relationship where it was a complete miscommunication, and I'm a huge communicator, but it was both of us having these stressors come out, and we allowed the stressors to run the show rather than us run the show. So it was like this, I was saying something and he was saying something, and we were trying to really understand each other, but it was just kind of misaligned, so we had to just like kind of leave that conversation and come back and be like, okay, cool, this is what's kind of coming up and resonating with me after we've had this conversation, so let's try to find that that ground as well. So it's like you can communicate as much as you want, and sometimes it's just not going to work in that moment because there's other factors going on. So just take a break and come back to it.
Yeah, and you can ask for space too.
Yeah.
I think that's we talked about that a while back. It's having the capacity to ask for space
Mm-hmm.
and the honesty and the like. Hey, I just need like a half a day. You know,
Yeah.
I used to just go for a walk sometimes whenever I would get things get stressful, and it's like I just need to go for a walk. I'm not mad at you. Like it's not about. I just need to find my like center real quick. I don't want to act out of some bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And we always feel. I think sometimes one person relationship, generally speaking, and I think people out there are gonna be nodding their heads at this. I'm just patting myself on the back, humble brag, is one person wants to fix it right now and one person
Mhm.
wants to fix it later
Mm-hmm.
when there's something that comes up. It's like, no, we need to talk this out right now. I'm generally that person. So a person's like, the other person doesn't really want to do that. It's like, you got to find a middle ground where it's like maybe somebody needs space, but if someone had the permission to like just ask for time or ask for space
Mm-hmm.
and giving the other person permission is super key.
Yeah, well, that's exactly
That's
what happened.
that's how I've gotten this single.
The single man giving advice.
Yeah. You should take every piece of advice that I've given on this podcast and just implement it to your marriage right now, and you'll end up just like me. Single as fuck. Hey, I'm out here hosting. I'm in the podcast game. You know how many
Yeah.
people out here podcasting and are married? Joe Rogan. That's it. Maybe Duncan Trussell, Chris Ryan.
That's
I don't
a good
know.
point.
There's a lot.
Should
No.
I not get into it?
I don't know.
Just
Are you open to
kidding.
the experiences that life has for you?
Yes.
No, I think that's the thing is like understanding what you really value about yourself and your partner and what you want to bring to it and being able to display that
Mm-hmm.
through the lens of giving permission to open up the communication pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, listen, I have a life up before I met you and there may be some fuckery afoot. There may be something that just pops up.
Yeah.
It's like, and it will most likely make no goddamn sense to you at all, and that's okay. And we're gonna sort it out.
Yes, and it comes down to don't take anything personal.
Oh, some little 4 agreements there, huh? Little Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I read the 5th agreement.
Oh,
Did you know there's a 5th?
I think I have 4 copies over there, and I have not read one of them.
5th or the 4th?
Both.
Oh, I saw the 5th and the love one over there, which
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up their love one. Yeah.
What's the 5th agreement?
The 5th agreement? I haven't finished to the end yet.
It's like 12 pages. How have you not finished it?
It's not 12 pages.
I'm shaming you.
Stop shaming me.
Shame?
I'm on the 3rd agreement. Although I've gone to the.
Wait. There's the 4 agreements,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a 5th agreement. It's another book.
But it's all 4 plus the 5th.
Oh, you got the accumulative?
Yeah.
So it's the 5 agreements?
Yeah.
Or is it the 4 agreements plus 1? How do they title that one?
The 5th agreement.
Oh. Okay.
So they give you the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then the 5th agreement.
This is some crazy witchcraft. I don't know what this is about. The Toltecs are
It's
wild.
a lot of fuckery.
A lot
It's a lot
of fuckery
going around.
A lot of fuckery out there in this book title game.
I don't even know what's going on. Or
I read
what
the
we're
4
talking
agreements,
about.
and I should probably read them. I think they're great, though.
They are, and the don't take anything personal is in that, and it's also in pretty much every personal development book that you pick up. It's
Yeah.
like people are having their own human experience, and that has sometimes nothing to do with you. Maybe it was like something you said that triggered it, but don't take like my blow up personal. This
Yeah.
is the stress that I'm dealing with. This is the stress that something happened at work, or this conversation over here at work happened, and I'm taking it home and I just blew up at you. It's not you.
Yeah.
It's this.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're in a situation where, like, your side chick is just getting out of hand, and then your wife gets all upset, and then you get to blow up at her because it has nothing to do with her. It's because that,
Your side chick,
yeah, your side chick.
the mistress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody's in open relationships in my fantasy.
Oh God. Don't make me put up my armor against you.
Oh, my God. Armor up, bitch. Oh, man. Kirsten, this has been fun.
It has. I would like to say I'm not saying anything against open relationships. It's just not for me.
Caveat, I am also not saying anything against open relationships.
I feel like disclaimers have to be said on
Yeah.
everything out there now, because somebody will take it
So
as
be like, but
an offense. Yeah.
I'm super into cuckolding.
Like-
And I'm like, dude, you do you, man. You do you.
What holding?
Cuckolding? You know what cuckolding is?
No.
Do you want to wrap this up with a cool relationship story?
Yeah.
I've told this on other podcasts, but people that listen to this podcast haven't heard it. And we're over an hour in now, so we've this is the people that are really into
These are
this
the
podcast.
peakers?
This is the one. People are
Okay.
like salivating right now.
Okay. Go.
All right. So, are you familiar with cuckolding? You don't know what that is, right?
No.
So cuckolding at its most extreme level.
Can you spell it for me?
C-U-C-K. Holding.
Cuck. Holding.
Cuck.
Okay.
Like call it being a cuck.
Cuck. Okay.
Yeah. So what cuckolding is guys that are into other people fucking their partner. Right? So a cuckold, and this could be in the same room, they can watch. You even think about the guy who's like in the corner while some other guy's like fucking his wife. Like that situation, that's cuckolding, right? So this girl that I was dating recently, we went out one time, South by Southwest, and we met up, and we were drunk. We had a fucking awesome night. We like super hit it off. It was great. I was like really stoked on it because I'd been talking to her on Bumble for a long time, and it was like longer than I normally talk to somebody on Bumble because I was traveling and she was traveling. So it was like 3 weeks of us like having this communication. Super hit it off. Was really into her, and then we go on our second date. Again, we're like hysterically laughing the whole time because I'm obviously hilarious and she was pretty funny too. And we're just having a great time. And we start talking. We get into like the talking about our lives a little bit, and essentially the open relationship thing usually comes up as like a conversation point. Just like to get a feel on somebody, and I also like to push edges when I'm meeting people. Come to find out she's dating some guy, and I was like, oh, okay. But they're in this open thing, and generally speaking, and if people that are listeners of this podcast probably aren't surprised by this, like I'm kind of like. My role is like the open-minded guy, right? Like I'm like, yeah, be who you want to be. Like I love that. I love to see people experiencing themselves, experiencing the world, and I'll question anything, and I'd love to learn. And I really am fired up by that. And she was dating this guy, so I was like, all right, well that's cool. That kind of changes this dynamic, and I definitely wasn't stoked on it. I was like visibly bummed. I was like, oh, because I like really like you, and I think this is gonna be really fun. But she's like, no, it's cool. He's into cuckolding. And I was like, what? And so not only, because we had like slept together the first time, we had, like I said, we had that great night. We hooked up. It was really funny and really fun. And like, it was just, I think that was like the last time I was drunk, and that was months ago. Went to the worst concert ever. I mean, there was no way we were going to leave that thing and not hook up, because it was like we argued about veganism and then went to the worst concert ever and still had the best time.
You had to make up for it?
No, it was great. It was like the most fun. And he's in a cuck. So on the second date, he's into cuckolding, and I was like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Well, he's cool. He's not only cool with me sleeping with other dudes. He wants to hear about it." And I was like, "So this guy is just like one-upped my fucking open-mindedness." Wait, we're gonna hang out and sleep together, and then you're gonna tell this guy about it, and it's gonna turn him on? It like melted my brain. I couldn't. It was a lot. It was a lot for me. I was like, in my nature, it's like, yeah, I guess I'm okay with that. For now. And we ended up they ended up stopping seeing each other, and then we ended up dating for a little while. But it was so strange to be like, what the fuck, really? And then to find out it's actually really common.
Interesting.
It's a really common thing. See, for people that like being cucked.
That's what's cute. Like I love hearing about people's fantasies and what turns them on, because it's like one of my friends says this. I don't know if he coined this term, but he says, "Don't yuck other people's yum."
Yeah.
Like some people, he was telling me about this rod that men stick up the hole, and I'm just like, oh my god, that sounds so powerful. Like. Not powerful, painful, but it's like to each their own, and it's fascinating to me how some people are very straight-laced, missionary, totally cool with that, and that is their exciting point. And then there's people on the full extreme, and then you have the voyeurism, and then you have the tying up, and then you have the like what is the one BDSM, but like the extreme BDSM where it's like hanging up by
and the
hooks.
Piercings?
Yeah. So it's like there's so many different things that I'm like, holy cow. And so it's like this guy having cuckolding.
Yeah.
You know, I'm surprised that it wasn't videoed.
I wouldn't have. I don't know. Well, you know what? I probably would have said yes. Yeah.
Well, then it comes at like, do you have a voyeurism type thing?
No, I don't know. And that's one thing I've actually been really curious about going into my life. It's like I'm actually not as sexually explored as I would like to be. So one of the other reasons about this like world tour thing I'm about to go on is like, I wonder what like kind of crazy shit I can get myself into.
Yeah.
where I would like to break out of the context. Like there's definitely some things there, but I think this is one of the things that some like tribal people do where they have an older person kind of walk them through like all the possibilities.
Like a mentorship?
Yeah, like a sexual mentorship. I need like a 50-year-old woman who's like banging hot and just like really fucking experienced and cool to just teach me her ways.
Mrs. Robinson?
Bring it. Bring it. Man, when I went to psychedelic science 2017, so the once every 4 years in the United States, MAPS will have these big conferences, right?
Oh, cool.
And I went to podcast this thing before the podcast even launched. This is like early days. And I expected there to be like some cute girls there, right? Like in that or in the psychedelic world, or that I could get along with, you know, because it's rare to have that many people in one place, like thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there and I was like, there were like very few. I actually have a threesome story from that weekend, but there were very few like attractive like people that were my age. But what I saw was a bunch of like 50 and 60-year-old women who had like really been tapped in and connected with themselves, that were so vibrant. You could tell they just taken the years and just gotten more and more vibrant as they age. And I was like, honestly, I was walking through that place and I was like salivating. I was like it was just something about these vibrant older women that was super intriguing to me.
I think,
and I mean intriguing as in like sexually intriguing.
I think that just from hearing you, I know we have to wrap up here.
We can do it. We can go as long as we fucking want, Kirsten. We think this is a radio show? No, dude. I'm the master of my fate in this show.
Word.
We can go 3 more hours. We'll do this till 3 in the morning if you want.
We do have some wine too to finish. Do you want me to fill your glass?
Yeah. I want you to fill my glass in so many ways, girl.
Word.
I don't know. People are just weird. People are just
I know.
All right,
I think we're delirious now.
Yeah, whatever.
No, but it's very interesting when women who have fully embraced that sexual and sensual energy of the feminine, of like, this is me, and you see it in older women some of the time, or a lot of the time. You know, they've already dated the people, they've already done this and that, and now they're really embracing this feminine energy, which they weren't really able to beforehand because they had a different societal norm. You know, so it's like some of these women who are in their 50s and 60s, they're just like really like, all right, here I am, and this is all me.
Yeah, and they probably did like a lot of LSD in their 30s, and they're just like super open-minded and woke as fuck. That's what I think. I don't know. That's just my hypothesis.
Or doing LSD now.
Well, they didn't stop.
And making up for time. Making up for
you
time.
Need the microphone into your face to talk.
Just licking my wine glass.
Yeah, no, but it was something that was very clear about women that had really embodied themselves in all kinds of ways throughout their whole lives. And that's one thing that that's actually what that experience really, I was never like a Botox fan, but seeing that and seeing clearly like these people just taking really good care of themselves and been not like taking care of themselves, like got the best fucking skin creams at whatever the skin cream store is. I was going to like try and drop a reference there, but I was like, I don't know. Bed Bath & Beyond or something. What's that one place called where people get makeup and shit?
Kiehl's?
Kegels? What are you talking about?
Kiehl's. Mac. I don't know.
Yeah, Mac.
Continue.
That's what I was thinking about.
Okay.
The one at the mall that I never go to. Yeah, I know there's really like been tapped in. I was like, wow, that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
Maybe you should go back this year.
I think it's next year.
Oh.
But it'll be in Europe. I'm sure I'll find them.
There's a reason to go to
where we
Europe.
were at today at the Whole Foods, or is it the Whole Foods? Like Whole Foods in Westlake, or any of those places out there in like the bougie ass part of town. There's a lot of swingers out there. You just got to be there long enough. You got to cruise around the grocery store for like 2 or 3 hours, and just wait to get swooped up by some coug.
What'd you do this weekend? Oh, you know, I hung out at Whole Foods waiting to get swooped up by a cougar.
Yeah. until I quit waiting. And went home.
That sounds exciting.
Oh man!
All right.
This
Shall
has
we
been
wrap
good.
it?
We spiraled. Yeah, we shall wrap it. Jesus Christ! This is dissolved into craziness. I feel like, except for the last 8 minutes, this has been a very solid show.
Yeah, I
and
think
the good party begins. Kirsten, thank you so much. I'm excited to do this retreat with you. For all of you guys out there that are looking to do a retreat with Kirsten and I, go to get therealness.com. By the way, the realness.com, if I want to buy that, is like $10,000. So look forward to never going to the realness.com to find our shit, because it's at gettherealness.com.
Get the realness.
Gettherealness.com and hit the lifestyle design. Wait, no, hit the Realness Retreat tab, and you will see a sign up form. They tapped in with what we got going on with the upcoming retreats.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
January is the
January
to be determined, but mostly January.
Somewhere amazing, and it's not Austin.
Not Austin, although Austin is amazing, and our
Austin
log
is
cabin
amazing.
is
Yeah.
dope as fuck.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I know, I can't wait. I can't wait to do it. All right, love. Thanks. Let's get some sleep.
Okay, sounds great.
That is the show. Much love to Kirsten for jumping in and sharing herself so vulnerably. Love having conversations with her, and you can look forward to more shows with her in the future. I'm sure I'll be bringing her on for the Hotline podcast. That's right, the Realness Hotline. If you didn't know, we're going to be starting a hotline series. So I've wanted to get more people engaged and on the show. And if you've ever wanted to ask a question on the show, maybe you're like listening to the show and you have a question that comes to mind about something we're talking about, and you want to just get your voice on the realness, then you should go hit the hotline, guys. What you need to do is either go to my Instagram, right? So that's at Connor Wanders, Connor with an E, Wanders with an A. Hit the call button. There's a call button there, super convenient, and that'll take you right to the hotline. You'll leave a voicemail. It'll send me an MP3, and I'll drop that voicemail on the show and just maybe go on a little ramble session about your question. We'll have some guests on for that, and that's going to be super fun. And if you don't feel like going to Instagram, you can dial 800-315-3218. We'll get you to the Realness Hotline. You'll hear my sweet, sweet voice on the other end, and you can leave that sexy voicemail. Let me know all your questions, thoughts, dreams, worries. Like, we have all kinds of stuff. We got a guy that matched with his neighbor in his apartment complex on Bumble and wants to know how to handle that situation. And we've also got some listeners calling in, dealing with their issues with their parents and breaking out of their parents' expectations. Like, so much stuff can be covered, and it's just nice to hear what people are going through and hear what people are dealing with and what they're loving about their life and their wins and their struggles. Like, this is what we're all about. And I'm stoked to offer the hotline to you guys. So that's 800-315-3218, or hit that call button on my Instagram, and it'll get you right to that hotline. What else we got? We got the Realness community. We got all kinds of links in the description, so I'm not going to go on too many rambles about that, but stay connected with us, guys. Much love having you here. Please leave a review. Drop that IG handle. Drop that fire emoji. Let me know what's up. Let me know what you feel about the show. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but it's all out there. We'll figure it out. And as you know, if you make it to the very end of the show, all the way to the end, you have a very special place in my heart. So thank you so much for listening. I love you guys. Thank y'all. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.
Let us drink to fallen brothers, to broken-hearted mothers, and the lucky sons of bitches, you and me.